Hello, Cleveland Opera Theater. Welcome to Opera 101. Today I am going to be talking about Verdi's. Oh, I might have gotten cut off. So let's try that again. Welcome to Opera 101 with Cleveland Opera Theater. My name is Megan Thompson. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach for Cleveland Opera Theater. Today, we're going to be continuing our Verdi month. We declared June Verdi month. We're going to continue with the discussion of Rigoletto. So the basic story of Rigoletto is it's pretty simple. We have a court jester, Rigoletto, whose job is to entertain the Duke of Mantua. Usually he's making fun of some other members of the court, usually some folks who are pretty powerful. And so at one point, he ends up getting cursed for a taunt that he makes. It kind of starts like the whole series of events that get set in motion. It ends up that the only thing he really cares about, as we find out, is his daughter Gilda. And so as things start threatening her, we follow the action. Now, this is definitely not necessarily happy and comedic, even though it does have a jester. It's a little dark. And the thing that's interesting here is, as with so many works in the mid-1800s, Rigoletto was also based on another work. So Giuseppe Verdi was always in search of something fresh and new and exciting. And because he had gotten so much fame already by this point in his career, he was given more or less free license as to what he was going to produce. So he found Victor Hugo's play, Le Roi s'amuse, basically the king who's amused or amusing the king. He thought that this would be a really great opera. He was like, this sounds really interesting. I think this is actually going to fulfill that commission I have. I'm supposed to be doing this commission for Teatro La Fenice in Venice. Why not use this subject matter? So he contacted his very frequent partner, librettist Francesco Maria Piave, and he said, hey, I've got this great idea. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to really be great for modern theater, as long as we can get by the critics. And so the Austrian censors at this point in time were just kind of ridiculous. And I say Austrian because at that point in history, Venice was actually under Austrian control. And so Verdi was very clear that this was not, going to be an easy road. This is not necessarily going to be like the happy-go-lucky, let's just get this opera produced road. But he was just sold on this idea. So let's start looking at the play first. Why is this play controversial? Why is this going to be a difficult road to make into an opera? It's already written, basically. Well, play was produced in Paris in 1832, but it ended up being banned after its opening performance. So one single performance, we banned the play. Reasons given, immorality. But really, the motive was probably more political. The censors really interpreted the play as making fun of and insulting the sitting king, who at that point was Louis Philippe. And then Hugo brought the suit. He was like, this is ridiculous. So Victor Hugo took the suit to court, tried to defend his play, tried to get permission to get it reproduced. Of course, he lost. And it was actually not performed again for 50 years. So ironically, Verdi's opera was actually produced in Paris long before the play was brought back. So in this, so Verdi tells Piave, hey, we've got to try to censor it. Censors are like, heck no, that's ridiculous. It's immoral. We're not putting that on stage. You must be nuts. Eventually, Piave, the librettist, suggested, maybe we can make a few changes. Verdi was not thrilled, but he was like, look, what if we move the story from France to Mantua? What if instead of the king in the play, we have a duke? What if instead of the jester's name being, Triboulet, it becomes Rigoletto? There was actually at one point an argument saying that Rigoletto shouldn't be hunchbacked. That was one of the things that Verdi really pushed back on. He felt very strongly we needed to keep the hunchback. He was like, will it work? Don't know, but let's do it. So finally, we go through all of this back and forth, censors, edits, we're working it, we're trying to compromise, we're trying to get everybody on the same page. Eventually, Verdi and Piave come up with a version that gets past the censors. They say, all right, fine, I guess this will work. So by March 11th, 1851, we have our first premiere performance of the opera. It's exceptionally popular success right from the start. It was brought successfully to other cities. And then within just a few years, it had been moved to London, Paris, New York. And what's funny though is while it was a hit with the audiences, there was still some criticism from the critics. I mean, I think there always is, right? But there was a French critic who wrote in the Gazette Musicale, um, Rigoletto is Verdi's weakest work. It lacks melody. It has hardly a chance to be kept in the repertoire. Very interesting considering now, here we are in the past decade, it's been one of the top 10 operas internationally. So clearly he was wrong. Clearly it's stayed in the repertoire. I personally also find that comment a little interesting considering on opening night, audiences were leaving and the next day we're still humming and singing bits of La Donna e Mobile in the streets. So clearly there was some melody there if it stuck with them. Um, the other problem that the press really found with the opera is similar to what the censors were saying, that this story is very dark, ugly, immoral. The US especially didn't really relate well to Rigoletto at first. It took some time for it to really get a foothold here in this country. But in music history, musicology, Rigoletto marks such an important shift in Verdi's compositional style. This is the beginning of his middle period. This is when he really started moving away from the traditional Italian compositional style of opera. So he was trying something new. So he himself actually called it revolutionary, which I think is funny. But Verdi said, I conceived Rigoletto almost without arias, without finales, but as a long string of duets. And so this is different because originally in Italian opera, you would open with a chorus. Every major character would have their own aria, usually like a two-part like da capo aria. You would pretty much end any act with a big chorus and big finale. But Rigoletto, there are no grand act finales. Each character has at least one big solo aria. You know, you probably know Parmi vedere le lagrime, even if you don't realize it. I'm sure you've heard La Donna Immobile, again, even if you don't realize it. The Sopranos aria, Gilda's aria, Caro Nome, very, very popular. So there are some massive arias in this piece, but he really was trying to move more toward the drama. He was really trying to leave behind the process of following that number aria model that had come before. So this really started opening the gates for what was going to come, not just in Verdi's compositional style later, but it really started ushering in through composed music, kind of made it more the norm. It wasn't necessarily the first, but it was more where it really started normalizing that compositional style. The other thing is he really was, again, this is where we're shifting into really emphasizing that the music was backing up the characters in the story rather than the other way around. So this is, again, that pivot point in the music, in the repertoire, where music became the focus, music became the important part. So, as I said, La Donna e Mobile immediately became successful, was starting to be sung in the streets, super melodic. Even today, it's one of those pieces that gets extracted for commercials and movies on a very regular basis if they're trying to highlight something as being opera. And then the other thing that I think is interesting about this that bears some mention is while they were reworking and handling all of those edits for the critics, Piave actually pulled a lot of the libretto from another opera, Il Duca di Vendome. And so it was about a duke and a hunchback. It was kind of interesting that there was a whole other opera that was already kind of in this vein that we were able to pull so much material from. Maybe it's not the most relatable story today. You know, we don't really have a whole lot of dukes and hunchbacks, you know, bouncing around, not too many court jesters. So a lot of modern productions change the setting of the opera. For better or worse, there's always going to be somebody who's not happy with the new setting, but it's very common to see different settings for this work. So, for instance, Jonathan Miller in 1982 did a production for the English National Opera. That one was set amongst the mafia in New York City's Little Italy. So it was like a 1950s take in the mafia. 2005, we had Doris Dörrier's Bavarian State Opera production. This time, instead of being in the court of Mantua, it was set on the planet of the apes. So a very big difference, right? Linda Borofsky's production for Seattle Opera back in, I think it was 2004 was the first production, and then it was repeated about a decade later. But she took the story and placed it in Mussolini's fascist Italy. And then Michael Mayer, 2013, this is the one that a lot of folks know right now. 2013 did a production for Metropolitan Opera, and this one was set in a casino in Las Vegas in like the 1960s era. So different characters became different archetypes from like the Rat Pack era, and the Duke himself became more of like a Frank Sinatra type, and Rigoletto was more like a Don Rickles. So I personally really liked that production. I thought it was a really nice translation. There was a lot of pushback though if you go and read some of the editorials when that came out. March 2014, we had another production from Lindy Hume, the artistic director of Australia's Opera Queensland. And that one was actually set as like a party-going world, but of the disgraced former Italian Prime Minister, Silvio Berlusconi. So a very relatable story when the setting gets changed slightly. You can kind of take the overall plot points and kind of move them around. You know, what father doesn't want to protect his daughter, right? Perfect timing for Father's Day, which was yesterday. So happy Father's Day, belated Father's Day to everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of Rigoletto. Definitely recommend that you go take a look, listen to some different productions, go and check out some of these different settings. I think it's a great time to kind of get a feel for how opera can be timeless and can always be relatable. So as always, this is Opera 101 with Cleveland Opera Theater. We're always picking new topics, so if you have a suggestion or a question or anything else, please feel free to drop it either here in the comment box or you can send us a message, send us an email, whatever. Make sure you visit our website at clevelandoperatheater.org. That way you can sign up for the mailing list and stay abreast of all of our upcoming events, including some of our summer concerts. So we look forward to seeing you. Opera 101 will return tomorrow at 12:15. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure. I'll see you next time.